you. Closed captioning will also be provided, and that transcript will be made available after the webinar along with the presentation and the recording. Just to ensure that we can hear the presenters, I'd ask that you please mute your phone, and you can do that by pressing *# or the mute feature on your desk phone or mobile device. If you have any questions or comments during the presentation, please share those. You're going to find those in the bottom left-hand corner of the presentation slide. And with that, I think I'll hand it over to David to introduce our presenter today.
Thank you, Jessica. This is David Mitchell. We are excited today to have Mike Callahan with us. Mike is probably known by many of you for his appearances at our APSE conferences where he's entertained us, and he's been mentoring several different programs and spots in Iowa through the years. Mike's the president of Marc Gold Associates, which is a network of consultants that provide technical assistance to anyone and everyone who's interested in community integration and employment for people with disabilities. Mike's, I think, known throughout the country as well as internationally for expertise in many different areas of rehabilitation. He's authored many publications and certainly has come to us through our work with the Office of Disability and Employment Policy, which we're extremely fortunate and grateful for. Mike's going to be visiting with us today. He's actually shown some flexibility with us, and he's going to spend a little bit of time talking about our work in hiring, training, and maintaining staff in the areas of customized employment. And then he'll spend a little bit of time going into the weeds in terms of negotiation and business development, which we've had some conversations about in the past and have had questions about. So we'll get a chance to spend a little time with that too. So as Jessica said, feel free to identify questions and we'll capture those, and we try to use that information not only today but to help inform us for future sessions. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mike. Welcome.
Thanks, David, and I surely do appreciate being here. Thanks for having me on Iowa's Community of Practice, and I indeed have had an opportunity to come to your state a couple of times, well, probably more than a couple, but regardless, one time actually quite recently, within a month or so. So it's nice to visit with you by phone. And David hit it right on the head. I'm going to be doing a two-part presentation. I know that there was a lot of interest from previous calls and interest just mailed in, and that you've let people know around the whole issue of staff. It is a huge issue, and I will try to talk about that as I am able. I do have some opinions about it and some reflections from what I hear and see as I have the opportunity to travel around the country and look at what people are doing and what might be working and certainly what doesn't work so well. So I'll be doing that, and we'll stop and then have, if there are any questions, I'll try to answer those. But as David said, also take advantage of your chat box. You have a question box in the lower left of your screen. Go ahead and ask those. And David, feel free if you feel like a question is particularly pertinent to what I'm saying at any moment, you can go ahead and interrupt me before the question and answer time. And then I want to spend a little time. I also got feedback that employer negotiation continues to be an issue, so we'll try to spend some time with that before the end of the call. So anyway, that's what we're set up for today. And as I start on this issue of staff, First, I probably need to make a disclaimer. I certainly would not purport to be either a person who knows much about the personnel function or the human resource function of business. Now, I'm a business owner and have been for years, but one of the things that's worked real well is that I don't have employees. So that, that does kind of make that a whole lot easier and a lot clearer. But I obviously do. I have in my past managed many staff, but what I mostly do is have the opportunity to talk to executive directors and HR people in human service agencies as they try to come to terms with staffing in this modern time. So, you know, as long as you kind of hear it like that, then that's the way I'd like to present it. But I have to start with some breaking news. I mean, CNN alert, that since your last signed the Work Innovation and Opportunity Act of 2014, H.R. 803, and thus amending the Rehab Act of 73. And this is very, very important because finally we got the placeholder in statutory language that we've been waiting for so many years of customized employment. So if you haven't had a chance yet, you might want to examine, just Google WIOA, Work Innovation and Opportunity Act, and you can get a copy of the statute. And I've pulled for you the language, the definition that was used, and actually it's interesting. Congress used almost verbatim the early language that the Office of Disability Employment Policy had in its announcement back in 2001, so that's 13 years ago, of what customized employment was. Now, the only place that showed up was in the Federal Register, and if a state had applied for one of the number of grants that ODEP was funding, then you might have seen this definition. Customized employment means competitive integrated employment for an individual with a significant disability that is based on an individualized determination of the strengths, needs, and interests of the individual with a significant disability. As an aside to our topics today, I need to tell you the one thing we didn't get in the Act was a definition of discovery, but this individualized determination of strengths, needs, and interests is not to be read as comparative assessment. This is my opinion, but I'm giving it to you because I know that when ODEP wrote this, they didn't have comparative assessment, vocational assessment in mind. They had discovery in mind. It is designed to meet the specific abilities of the individual with a disability and the business needs of the employer. And later in negotiation, I'll come to this and we'll talk a little about this. And it is carried out through flexible strategies such as, and then the definition goes on, I'm not really quite sure what Congress has in mind. We'll wait for the regulations on this, job exploration by the individual. But B, I know exactly what they're talking about, working with an employer to facilitate placement, including customizing a job description, it goes on, developing a set of job duties and work schedule, representation by a professional chosen by the individual, and providing services and supports at a job location. So the B part is very important, and I just wanted everybody to see this. Customized employment shows up in the statutory language anywhere from about 8 to 10 times. Now, I've had to go through just and read it. I've not found a program sophisticated enough to do a word search or a phrase search. I'm sure some of you might find such a thing and then be able to come up with exactly how many times. But it is very important. And the last thing to tell you on this is that please watch for the proposed regulations. Now, they could come out anywhere from about 4 months to, unfortunately, as long as 2 years. The timeline should be quick, but the bureaucracy moves at the bureaucracy's pace. It's in the regulations where we can help influence the bureaucracy. In this case, it's the U.S. Department of Education and Rehab Services Administration. And folks, just a quick civics lesson. I know you get told to write letters to, congressional representatives, senators, and all that sort of thing. And most of us feel like it really doesn't do any good, or we just get lumped in with every other angry person that's writing a letter nowadays. But I can tell you your best bang for your buck of ever having your voice make a difference is to comment on proposed regulation. If in your agency you'll get together and read this, I would recommend Iowa getting together as a community of practice and let the writers know about it. You'll get proposed regulations, which then turn into final regulations. And a lot of times if something is missing, if something is misstated, they will change it if just on a relatively few letters from the field. So I just want to urge you on that count to be awake, be aware, and when the proposed regulations come out, whenever they are, then respond to them. So anyway, and this is your senior citizen, your senior center, senior citizen. There's a interesting little screw up there. Your senior senator from Iowa. This is his pride and joy. So I mean, Senator Harkin really wants this bill, and he got the bill, and it's the big part of his legacy. Let's make sure that the regulations really reflect what our field needs in order to advance customized employment. So that's my editorial for the day. So let's turn our attention to agencies and staff. And by the passage of this information, I feel the stage is set for a new set of challenges. And one of the things that's going to be very, very important is that agencies really understand how different the demand is likely to be. And it's not just because of the passage of the amendments to the Rehab Act, but your state has a Employment First focus. You've been a part of the Employment First State Leadership Mentoring Project. You've already begun to understand the forces that are at work, and that's going to affect staffing. I mean, we've already had a hard enough difficulty with staffing under the what we might refer to as the traditional system, but now we really have a challenge in front of us for staff. So we're going to try to at least talk about, if not making it all better, at least maybe avoiding some pitfalls, which is probably about the best I can do for you today. And I think that there is kind of a sobering reality for all of us. Where things are moving is that finally a departure from the status quo that we've held for so many years. I had the opportunity back in 1987 to write a book called Getting Employed, Staying Employed, and it enjoyed a lot of use and a fair number of accolades. And the opening chapter in that book was titled Sheltered Work, and then a question, A Dinosaur in Our Midst. That was 1987. Best I can do the math real quickly, that's 27 years ago. And now I think we are faced with the likelihood that we really mean all people can work, and it's our job to assist people who want to work and who are focused in doing that, to assist them to become employed. And we're not going to be able to pick and choose. So we've got this full commitment ahead of us. So we can't just one of the things from a staff perspective that's been so hard, I think, is asking staff to have one leg in traditional services and supposedly the other leg in these emerging services, and just literally getting, stretched like a wishbone from a chicken as far as what it is you're supposed to do and what it is we're embracing. I think we're coming to a time where anything less than a full commitment is really likely to fail. And failure is not only going to be a problem for the people that need jobs, it's going to be an agency problem. I mean, you can have a failure of the business model, and then staff people lose jobs too. And we don't want that for any of these parties. We need agencies. We need responsive and creative and motivated staff, and we need people to get jobs as a result of all the change. It's not just a creaming situation. So certainly the times have not been made easier, but maybe we can say they've been made clearer, and that is an important thing to think about. And one of the things I try to help agencies with, and I don't want to throw anybody under the bus here, but the fact is there was a time when Blockbuster looked like it would be around forever. So you ask yourself, you know, are you in denial about the emerging issues? Do you want to stay being a Blockbuster corporation or entity or agency, or do you want to be Netflix? And of course, Netflix will have to answer the same question when whatever the next thing that challenges the status quo comes along. But right now, we've got this question. So staff agencies, I think, or staffing agencies and issues start when agencies are confused about this or they're uncommitted. And again, staff are trying to decide, do I try to hold on? Do I really give in to this? And to me, that creates, at least for those staff that we've managed to attract and get in our agencies, that creates an uncertainty and an issue of less than full effort that is very, very likely to be required. In fact, to me, there's no doubt that that full effort is needed in order to go forward. A big part of the staff issue, I think, has to do with the business model that we've been working under. You know, for the most part, we've enjoyed the luxury of having our combination of what I refer to as a preparation system and a coverage system. That's basically what we've had. Now, we've made it look good because we've had adjunct sort of supported employment programs, and people have always gotten jobs here and there. But the main parts of our program is we're preparing, traditionally, we're preparing people to work, and we offer a certainty of coverage. And, you know, that kind of model requires a level and a sort of funding that is rapidly changing. And, in fact, it's probably changed already. You know, the Netflix could have told Blockbuster, hey, you know, you're already a dead company working, but you just don't recognize it. We probably are right now. But we certainly have to look at those aspects of the model. And that really means not only agencies understanding a shift in who we are and what kind of money is available to do what it is we've done, that that's not going to be bought anymore, but also sending that message to staff, to families, and certainly most importantly to the individuals we serve and represent, that this shift is there. It is not a preparation model anymore, and it's not just a coverage model. We can't just promise 6 or 7 hours a day of service because the money that's out there isn't paying for that. The money that's out there is paying for discrete services and employment. And I think my message to everybody is that the companies, the agencies that will make it, and the agencies that will attract staff who want to be a part of this are going to recognize this shift. And you know, we have to begin to think about that and to send that message clearly. One of the feelings I have is that we ask people to, and I'm saying duplicative, but that's, as I'm looking at the term now, it's not actually what I mean. It is dual. It is doing two things. Again and again, I run into staff who are asked to fully be a part of the traditional agency that still exists, but then they find themselves in a pilot, maybe like this community of practice. Maybe the organization embraces discovery or all the other parts of the customized process, and they find themselves doing two things. And I've got duplicative, but I really mean a doubling. You know, that the staff person is asked to be a part of the traditional agency and yet get out there, and that just tears staff apart. I really think it does. And I think what we need to do is to have a focus. And I know some of you are embracing that. So good for you, those agencies that have already made this clear decision. We are now going in a new direction. And I think in that sense, if we start challenging staff with bold initiatives rather than holding patterns, I think we have a way to keep the best of the people that we have right now, and I hope begin to attract some people that we aren't even trying for, some people that we need that would take on a challenge. But they're not going to take on a holding pattern. They're not going to take on just continuing to make sure that the workshop stays open so the people who want to work there will have a place to go. That's not the kind of challenge that I'm talking about. Whether or not somebody figures out how to keep an agency open, Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities is funding it. And my bet is you would tell me, and neither is anybody in Iowa, at least in the long term. So really coming to terms with putting that challenge out there. And so these are the complaints. And now here I do use the right word. Most staff are complaining to me they've got a doubled workload. They have to do everything that they were doing, plus they have to do the new stuff. And we simply can't expect people to stay motivated, stay energized, and committed, because this is hard stuff. Another thing that is so problematic, and I will tell you right up front, I am part of the problem here as well as everybody else that comes into your state, and that is conflicting strategies. You need to know that consistency is probably the most important thing an agency can deal with. Now, a state can go broad. A state can say, here are some folks that could come in and help you out. But consultant overload will just turn you into complete stasis. I mean, you'll not know where to go. Like one person saying this and another person saying that, and what do I do here? And what I think is, there are plenty of good strategies that are not the same, and they will never be the same. You're never going to have a bunch of consultants who have figured this out in our own unique ways, all coming together and saying, okay, now we're going to all do exactly the same thing. But within your agency, you can make that decision of identifying kind of who sounds best and this really works for us, and not confusing staff with these often conflicting different ways of doing things. And I really think that's a problem. Also, I hear from staff, I mean, it's often the case that two things are said at the same time. We either have too much training or we don't have enough. It seems like we're always getting information, but it's really not effective. And the information we really need, we need much more deeply than we're getting. So these are obviously issues. And then I come back to the agency as owning a big part of the staff issue, and that is if you have a conflict between your mission and your practice, you're going to have a very difficult time keeping people. Now, and the money we're paying, we're going to attract people who have not taken their expertise other places. And it's not to say that new staff are incompetent, but we know we don't have the money to attract the kind of staff that we would like to have. So what we need to do is really have the challenge out there. I have a nephew that just joined the Peace Corps, and I'll talk about that later in the best job the hardest job you ever loved sort of thing. And what they end up doing is attracting the very brightest and best and paying them absolutely nothing because of the challenge. And somehow we've got to get back to a new mission that really sends that message. And then go out to your universities. If you're a University of Iowa person, go there. If you're Iowa State, go there. Wherever it is that young people are getting trained, and send the challenge out. We've got some hard work to do in our state. We should be a leader. We want you to work with us. And yeah, at the end of the day, the pay's going to suck, but hey, you're going to get some benefits, and you're going to do that hardest work you ever loved. And I think that's what we have to begin to do. And we know that pay is a problem, and nobody is. I mean, there's no likelihood that that's about to change. But I will have some ideas maybe of how to incentivize a little bit. It's always a valid complaint. And for those of you that have chosen this field, I am very, very old. I've been in the field all of my life. I've never really, except all the way back in college, done anything other than being in the human service field. And pay has always been a problem. But the motivation and the mission has made up for it. I don't regret it a second, but, I mean, there's got to be the mission. You got to feel like you're a part of something, not just a holding pattern. I believe there are some ways to incentivize quality outcome in working harder. It won't be an awful lot because there's not an awful lot there. But if we change our business models, I think we have a chance of enough to say, you know, these people appreciate me and they're actually giving me a little part of the action. Human service will never be business. We're never going to compare this to a big sales commission or anything. But at least a little recognition will certainly help. And obviously staff are going to wonder, is all of this change, is it real? We've been through it before. I gave you that figure. 27 years ago, I write a chapter that predicted we would be here, and it took 27 years. So all the staff who said, yeah, this sounds really good, but it's not really likely to happen, well, they were right 27 years ago. And that was thinking that we were about to change then, so we were already knowing the issue in 1980. So this time, it's really important that we understand this is a clear intent. Let's go forward. And, and I think that will really help. But we have to help people understand what their job is. We have to be crystal clear about what is my job. And if somebody is just looking for a job, folks, I'm sorry, we don't need them. We don't need them. There are a lot of people out there who would like the benefits, and it kind of using human service like the entry level of the service industry, where they're just in until a better opportunity comes along. And if there's anything we can do to weed those people out, I mean, I want to hear in an interview, I want to hear passion, and I want to confront people with a challenge and then hear passion in return. And if not, then let's just hold until we can find the person. And again, I'm not saying that it's easy. I know plenty of people who I've got some friends as executive directors who are charting this unbelievable effort to try to get staff. But again, they're just about the most traditional services, and I'm not convinced that we can't attract some folks who really step up to a challenge if we put that challenge in front of them. So how do we move forward? Well, our goals have to be clear, and we have to embrace that this is the hardest work. The next thing, the Peace Corps had it right. Helping people who have been non-traditional in terms of our belief that they're employable, and non-traditional in their presence in the group of people who get jobs, is the toughest work we'll ever do. And I think we can love doing it. This isn't easy. Anybody that comes in and says, oh, this is easy, just decide to do it. It'll stay hard. So we have to try to attract people who are into really doing the right thing and doing it hard. And people who want to change. If somebody wants to maintain the status quo, let them go to an agency who's set on being Blockbuster. That's okay. Let them go there. That's not what we're talking about here. And try to find a process that you can believe in, that you'll work around. If you have to change, change. I'm not saying don't, but don't just inundate staff with a whole bunch of ideas that you expect staff then to put together and come out into some sort of hybrid process that you feel like will be better. Really try to get some clarity, get some certainty, and stay the course with this stuff. I believe piloting efforts is really effective. I've always found that to be instructive. And the way in which funding from VR and DD services is emerging, it requires us to live on our resources as they're available. And I'm all for spinning off a subset, an entity, something on the side that says, here's our effort to try to do this. And we're going to learn to live on our resources and then as quickly as possible take that to scale. I think that would help. Staff have to have information, but it doesn't always have to be face-to-face. There are a number of strategies out there that can provide kind of that combination. One of the things that I find as a consultant, as much as there's a business benefit to me of face-to-face, I find that a hybrid of distance learning and a much smaller amount of face-to-face will really give people what they need. And staff need to do whatever the process is. This isn't a theoretical thing you can think your way through in your technical assistance. Get staff actually doing it. Also, I want to recommend, and this seems to be a no-brainer, but of course it's not, and that is to actually negotiate or customize with staff. Most agencies have traditional staff roles, just like the employers we're going to. Send out the message your agency is willing to customize. You will get access to people you haven't had access to, and that fits with the funding model that's out there now. So really send the message. We not only ask employers to consider the value of customization, our agency accrues the value of customization, and we can tell you how it's benefited us. I think that would be a strong message. And consider trying to find ways to incentivize somehow staff who become certified and credentialed. We're going to be looking in the future for increased certification and credentialing. One of the things I want to beg for is make sure whatever you choose, and there will be many good ones available, actually require staff to do whatever you're being credentialed or certified in, so that it's not just a paper test, it's not just reading a book, but it's actually doing it and then getting certified so that you have practice. And there are plenty of analogs in higher education for how that could happen. And one of the things I want to do is, I know I've not answered the questions completely. I want to start going through kind of a different perspective. But David, let me stop and see if you would lead any questions anybody might have around what I've said, and then we'll kind of take our different look through the process and through negotiation. So let me stop here just a second and see if there's any questions that arise as in response to what I've said.
Thank you, Michael. I think you're right on the nose with a number of those comments, because I think we're seeing some of that shift occurring right now in Iowa. If any of the people out there, providers, have any questions, or send us an email, and I'll be happy to phrase the question. We'll give you a minute to collect any thoughts.
As you're doing that, I'll talk about the slide in front of us just as a placeholder while if any of you are thinking about writing something. One of the things that as Congress identified customized employment and defined it, one of the things they didn't do was to define the process you use to get there. I am less than happy about that, and believe me, one of the things that I will be commenting on in relation to the proposed regulations is for the regulations at least to suggest, not prescribe, but suggest the sort of process and that one might use. And ODEP, Office of Disability Employment Policy, in 2009 did a knowledge, skills, abilities, and other characteristics of customized employment and verified from the field a process much like you see right here. So just realize that embracing a clear process is part of the staff issue that I think is necessary to embrace. So David, I'm not seeing anything yet. Shall we go forward, or should we wait a few minutes?
Michael, could you comment on the knowledge, skills, and abilities, and reference where people might find that if they're interested? And I would also put in a plug for our listeners to check out the Marc Gold Associates website. There's a wealth of information, resources, and connections and links that might steer you to more information and more questions.
Sure, David, and thanks for the plug of the website. What I would offer to you is without getting out of my page, which I dare not do, I don't have the info on the tip of my tongue. But here's what I will do. There is a final report, which is actually very succinct, that has the entity that ODEP had to do this. It's one of the Beltway entities, and their final report with all the information. I will send it to you, and you can forward it to everybody on this call, and I can do it within just minutes after the call. So that would then help them get their hands right on the knowledge, skills, abilities. You get KSAs are real common in D.C. That's knowledge, skills, abilities, and they added an O, knowledge, skills, abilities, and other characteristics of customized employment. The reason they did that, did ODEP, is that what we had was a lot of rebranding. Well, we used to do this, and now we call it customized. And that's not good customized employment. It's just rebranding. And then you had a lot of confusion. You had things that were touted to be customized that simply weren't. Now, whether they were done historically or not as rebranding, that's not the point. So what ODEP recognized was there was a need for clarity, the sort of clarity I've been talking about on this call, and that's what the KSAO research. And it's research, and it was done in 2009, and I'd be glad to send that to you with the final report that everybody could see.
That would be great, and Jessica's become very adept at getting information out to the distribution list, and we'll find a way to get that posted too on the website so everybody can access that. Thank you.
Sure, yeah. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead, and one of the things as you're looking at the customized process, I know you've had webinars on discovery and the writing of profiles. I hope you've had a webinar on customized planning. And maybe even material development of non-traditional marketing materials, both for the concept of customized and for the job seeker. I think both the concept of customized employment and the job seekers of customized employment need innovative, non-traditional marketing strategies so employers can see clarity and see the contributions that the person might bring. But I want to focus on job development and negotiation, that aspect of the customized process. And one of the things that is very, very important about getting to employer negotiation is understanding the unique character of customized employment, in that from the very beginning, at the U.S. Department of Labor, of all places, and I say that respectfully, but folks, the fact is, the U.S. Department of Labor, this is my opinion, so please understand when somebody at DOL hears me say this, they'll understand I'm just speaking my opinion. I think the Department of Labor hasn't been about labor in a long time. It's been about employment. It's been about businesses and employers trying to help businesses create the opportunities for labor. And the reason I'm saying that is not a criticism. It's just, in my opinion, a reality. But what it says is that it's pretty remarkable that a concept that came out of Department of Labor, out of the Office of Disability Employment Policy, is actually driven not by employers and the jobs that are available, but driven by the individual. So if you're going to successfully negotiate in customized employment, you've got to understand the connection of the individual driving the process. If you miss that, you'll be doing some of that rebranding that I'm talking about, where you go back and say, well, we went out and we talked to employers, and they had some job openings, and we put some people in those jobs, and they're customized. Well, I'm going to argue with that. You know, if employer need is driving the process as the primary driver, then in my opinion, you're not customizing. The individual drives the process. And discovery, or whatever is your placeholder for discovery. I mean, you can, I mean, there are many people doing discovery. We chose at Marc Gold Associates at a point in our history not to trademark discovery. We chose to let it become a generic term that anyone could use, and indeed, many people are using the term. And we want it that way. Think person-centered planning. It wasn't trademarked back in 1980, and so we now have person-centered planning that you can have any version of, and discovery is about the same way. So whatever it is that you're doing in discovery, by learning about the person, now the new act calls these strengths, needs, and interests. And at Marc Gold Associates, as we developed discovery decades before the definition finally got coined, we use the terms conditions for success, those are needs. Interests are the same as the interests that are being talked about in the Act. And instead of strengths, we talk about contributions, potential contributions to an employer. And obviously, you are almost always contributing your strengths. So one of the things to understand in employer negotiation is the person is driving the process. And that is very, very easy to lose. It's very easy to give up on. It's very easy to be confused about. So these are the kind of the three legs of the stool, so to speak, from the individual side. Now, on the employer side, and actually the Act just barely touches on this, but it does. If you read deeply in some of the customized employment information within the new Act, the employer needs to receive benefit uniquely. Most employers receive benefit from conceiving of a set of needs, bundling those together in a job description, and then labeling that job description with a job title, and then going out and through their personnel function and trying to find people that can do the job title that's reflective of the duties in the job description. And what customized employment recognizes that creates an absolute barrier to employment for some people. If we keep trying to compete against those pre-bundled tasks, we will always have people whose impact of disability is so significant they simply won't compete. However, if we can unbundle, if we can get this unbundling to the point that we have a different way of looking at it, and not your father or grandfather's job carving here. We're not trying to just take tasks away that we find unwieldy. We're actually trying to be organic about this, to find ways employers can benefit uniquely. Unmet needs is one. Task, the great lesson we've learned from Project Search sweeping the country is that employers find it in their interest to assign tasks that can be done by people at the entry level that they've been paying people very high money at a much higher position. This is not handicapism. It's a job deal. It's a business deal. And companies are continually willing to look at ways to improve their operation. So with these perspectives, see, this is really when we talk about all of this employer negotiation, we've got to understand the intersection of these last two pages, and that occurs on this page. In my opinion, the whole customized employment issue is a little like an algebraic equation. Now, trust me, I don't want to run any of you off kicking and screaming saying that was the worst part of my high school experience, or for some of you that had to do it, your college experience. So hang in there with me. It's a fairly simple equation. In algebraic equations, we always have unknowns. The thing that we make known in customized employment is the individual. And the way we make that person known to us is through a non-competitive, qualitative approach, such as discovery. Now, it can be other approaches. So, again, I'm not arguing for discovery or any iteration of discovery being the only strategy, but some qualitative way of understanding who people are give us the known part of the equation. That's the left side here, what we call the individual side. Job development and negotiation seeks to solve for that person. Given this person, X then is a whole set of potential employers in the community that might have benefits or needs that would then match the individual. That's the essential equation of customized employment. And if you have a set of strategies that reflect this, it will work for you. I mean, it simply does. Don't, my experience and my advice, don't just hope it will. Don't just kind of go in without knowing the job seeker and without learning about the employer and then figuring it all out. So as you're looking at this slide, on the individual side of the equation, discovery or some approximation of discovery, something similar to discovery, answers the individual side. So what answers the employer side? Well, that's an aspect, in my opinion, of job development. And in order to deal with that, one of the things we had to invent is a concept or a set of strategies that help employers come to terms with, would it be in their business interest to identify and meet unmet needs of the business? Would it be in their business interest to consider removing tasks that could be done by the job seeker we're representing at a much lower pay grade, but yet still at or above minimum wage, rather than paying somebody at a much higher rate to do it? Again, Project Search taught us that. Or would it be in the business interest to look at the operation and have people perform tasks that, again, are consistent with the person's strengths and interest and needs that would enhance the business? And if it's when that works, then we get a yes, and the concept that needed to be invented is employer needs and benefits analysis. It is an activity we offer to the employer. It's, if you will, it's like discovery for the employer, if you think about it that way. But the outcome focuses are different. Discovery for the individual, strengths, needs, and interests. Discovery for the employer, unmet needs, tasks better performed by others, tasks that enhance the business. So when we have these things, if we understand that, we are in a better position to actually negotiate with employers. And I want to talk about two terms of art that are often used interchangeably, and they're not at all the same. I mean, they're both good. There's nothing wrong with them, but they're different. Those are the terms matching and negotiating. Matching, this is my definition. I didn't look this up, so I don't know if Webster's or any other dictionary would agree with this, but this is my definition for matching. Matching refers to the act of connecting that which needs to be, and in this case, it's the job seeker's conditions, interests, and contributions. So connecting with that which needs to be with that which already exists in a way that creates a shared benefit to both parties. So when we're matching, we identify the individual and what they need, and we can actually go out and see if it exists. However, look at this. In negotiating refers to the act of changing that which needs to be to that which exists through beneficial compromise. So you realize at times that this is what a person needs, but as you go out there, you're not actually finding it in match. You're not, it's like, oh, I just matched up somebody that I had a person who needed to work until 3 p.m. but no later. So I found a business that closed at 3. So that was a good match, and that is exactly matching. But more often than not, you'll find a business that's open until 5 or 7 or whatever time, and you actually have to negotiate. You have to change that which needs to be, that which exists. And that is not something that we are used to doing. And by the way, this is not a rights initiative. I am all for disability rights. But negotiation is not about disability rights here. It's not what we're talking about. We're talking about business benefit and the need of the individual. And when you do that, some things that, things that may be matched. This is just a short list, but be interesting for any of you in an agency to begin to think about. If somebody says, I want to be able to walk from my home to work, well, that can be matched by only targeting businesses in that close proximity. Also, you can match if somebody wants a general type of work to be performed. You can match that. Environmental conditions. For instance, I want to work outside. I do not want to work in an office. Well, you can't go to an office and then negotiate that a person wants to work outside. You have to match that. And the tasks that the person is best at performing really can only be matched. You can't say, well, I really want you to work harder and learn these tasks that you don't know and that you're not very good at. Well, you can say it. It's just not likely to work. Well, what about things on a job that's likely to be negotiating? Well, tasks that an employer needs to have done is really a matter of negotiation. That the employer might just say, I'm sorry, I don't really care. You need to negotiate that. The amount of natural support they might offer, that's a negotiation. It's not an absolute. Which days or hours of work is the work to be done to be performed? That's negotiated, especially if the employer, if you're not in a situation where you can match. Often the starting pay, in fact, I say often, virtually always the starting pay for a customized job is a negotiation. So one of the things I'm just trying to say, we obviously didn't have time, particularly in 25 minutes, to do a full presentation on negotiation, but I just wanted you to begin to think of it in that way. And one of the things, the whole starting point of customized is so different. If we start with a personnel function of a job, if we go to a personnel office, the hiring manager, we've gone to the wrong place. And I know most of you, any of you that have done job development know what I'm saying. Personnel managers don't negotiate. They fill orders. If we want to negotiate, we have to have a starting point with decision makers. And in order to have a starting point with decision makers, we've got to do research, we've got to get connected, and don't go making a job call unless you've figured out who's making the decisions here. Now, it doesn't always mean the CEO, but it does mean somebody whose job it is to do the tasks of the company, not to find people to do the tasks of the company. That's a personnel or an HR function, okay? Kind of a blatant sales thing right here. There are some resources at marcgold.com. I appreciate, David, your plug earlier. We have these manuals do cost $15 a piece, but we have a ton. We give away 50 times this much information at marcgold.com. So please, any of you visit. If you'd like some manuals, great. They're good resources. But the main thing is there's plenty of free materials on the entire process that you might want to visit. And this whole, I'll just stop with this last thing of all these resources that are free at marcgold.com. Be sure you put M-A-R-C, not M-A-R-K. And David, I want to turn it over to you. We got about 5 minutes, so hopefully we'll have a couple of questions. I'm still not seeing any questions in the chat box, but maybe you've got some, or maybe somebody will take the opportunity to write some questions.
Michael, could you maybe expand a little bit on negotiation as we look at the differences in our community? So if you're in a smaller rural area where everybody knows everybody, some of the ways you might still build on those relationships to be able to get into some of those characteristics you looked at on negotiation versus matching, versus if you're in a larger metropolitan area where you are going into a business for the first time. In some of our past calls, we've had some questions about some of the differences, and I'm just wondering if you would respond differently depending upon, which scenario you might be in.
Yeah, and I think To me, the issue is probably not so much negotiation itself, but certainly there's stylistic differences. And you know, a lot of Iowa is classic. I mean, your heartland, your mid-America, and your rural. Although by far not all of Iowa. I understand that, you know, whether it's Des Moines or Cedar Rapids or Iowa City or any of your other cities operate a little more like cities than those small rural areas. But I'll start with the small rural area. And I think you just want to fit stylistically in that small area. You want to let people know without sounding like you are not who you are. That's where in a small town people really zap you, is like when you're trying to play a role that is like, come on, just talk to me. And that's fine. You don't have to change your style to negotiate. You can just let Uncle Fred, who owns the seed and feed, and you have somebody that could really work well and they have interest in that, to say, let me tell you, Uncle Fred, why I'm here, because of who this person is and what we might be able to do for you in a way that you've never thought about having it done. Or maybe you have, and if you have thought about it, then this just affirms that. So, I mean, there can be a level of informality, a level of ease maybe to get in. You need to be yourself and not be someone else. So those are stylistic differences. Now, if I'm in Des Moines and I'm going to the lead TV station or newspaper in Des Moines, or maybe a bank or someplace like that, then stylistically I need to be in obviously more of a business mode, but it still starts with here's the concept I'm offering you. I mean that's out there. This is what we're embracing, and this is how it might benefit you. And here's the person who would like to work here, and they've chosen your company, and here's what they have to offer you. And we'd like to see if maybe you could benefit from what they have to offer. Well, both the messages, whether it's, you know, the lead paper in Des Moines or the seed and feed in some tiny rural Iowa town, it's still the same negotiation, but stylistically and from a level of you know, appropriate business demeanor and formality, there are some shifts there. I mean, you're not giving it all up, but we still have to stay focused on the concept. In neither place is this a seat-of-your-pants deal. It's just like, oh, try it, you'll like it, you know, you'll get along just fine. And a lot of times in rural areas, we tend to think, well, they're not going to do anything structured, so you just have to just kind of let them do what they're going to do. I mean, I would still try to explain, but explain in a way that is of the culture and of the place. Don't give up on negotiation at all. But you might get, if there's any difference, you might get kind of tapping into my stereotype and belief about rural settings is people in rural settings tend to understand the people issue. I mean, the people are right there. You know most of the people in town. There's one degree of separation between everybody in a small town, whereas in Des Moines there could be, you know, 5 degrees of separation. So sometimes it's a little easier in smaller and more rural areas to tap in to just the human understanding part. But still the basic deal is there. It needs to be a business deal. Whether it's rural small town or the biggest place you've got in the state of Iowa, still needs to be a business deal, and your style needs to reflect the culture in which you're making the presentation. So that's about the best I could say in the time we have, David. I hope that helps a bit.
Michael, thank you so much. Appreciate the feedback and the opportunities to think about this topic in a different way. I'm going to go back and dig out my old algebra book and work on my equations. But for those of you who have been participating in our community of practice, as Michael outlined, there's a process, and hopefully our sessions have touched base on those processes. But even prior to our community practice beginning, we've had a series of presentations and access to resources, and those are available through the IVRS website under the link of Customized Employment. So feel free to access those, listen to the past programs. Our pilot projects have got some information on there that they participated in. So we really have tried to put together some ease of access to that information. So Michael, thank you very much. We appreciate your expertise and time that you've shared with Iowa. And Jessica, I'm going to turn it over to you for final comments.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, David, and thank you again, Michael. Just want to draw everybody's attention to the poll questions. We really appreciate your responses and participating in those. We pay careful attention to them. You can download the presentation from today in the bottom left-hand corner, and I will keep the room open so you can continue to respond in the meantime. Our next webinar is scheduled for September 30th with Val Morgan, so look for information in the next couple weeks on that. And thanks again for joining us today. Everybody have a good rest of the week. Thank you.
Bye-bye.